You can hear them before you see them. The voices, dozens of them layered over each other, spilling out of doorways that shouldn't fit more than a family but somehow hold eight. The walls here are thin, timber and plaster patched with whatever was close enough to grab, and the smell hits you next. Not just sewage, though there's plenty of that, it's everything mixed together. Rotting food, smoke from cheap coal, bodies that haven't seen soap in weeks. This is London. But not the London anyone puts on a postcard. We're standing in St. Giles, a district most people with money would never enter, and most people without money can't leave. It's 1665, and this part of the city operates under rules that don't exist anywhere else. Not because someone designed it that way, but because when you cram thousands of people into streets built for hundreds, systems break down, and what replaces them isn't pretty. The thing about St. Giles is that it's not an accident, it's a consequence. London is growing faster than anyone knows how to manage. People flood in from the countryside looking for work, for survival, for anything better than what they left behind. And they end up here, in rooms stacked on top of each other, in courtyards so narrow you can touch both walls at once. The city didn't plan for them, so they built their own version. Let's walk down this alley. It's called a court, but that makes it sound more official than it is. Really, it's just a gap between buildings that someone decided to live in, then someone else, then 10 more. The ground is uneven. Packed dirt mixed with things you don't want to identify. There's a pump at the end of the court, shared by maybe 40 families. The water comes up brown most days. People boil it if they can afford the fuel. If they can't, they drink it anyway. What surprised me when I started looking into this was how organized the chaos actually was, because it is chaos, but there's a system underneath. Not a good system, not one anyone would choose, but a system. Take housing. Most people here don't own anything. They rent by the week, sometimes by the night, from landlords who rent from other landlords who maybe, somewhere up the chain, actually own the building. The rent is high, absurdly high for what you get. But when you're desperate, you pay. And because the rent is high, people sublet. A family rents a room, then rents half of it to another family. That family rents a corner to someone else. I've read accounts of single rooms with 12 people sleeping in shifts. Day workers sleep at night. Night workers sleep during the day. The bed, if you can call it that, never gets cold. But let's keep moving. Out of the court and onto a wider street. Not wide by any modern standard. Maybe 10 feet across. Buildings lean toward each other overhead, almost touching. It's darker here than it should be, even in daylight. The upper floors jut out, each level extending a bit further than the one below, partly for space, partly because the tax system charges based on ground floor area, so people build up and out. The street is crowded, always crowded. Vendors selling things that might be food, children running errands or just running, women carrying water from the pump back to their courts, men standing in doorways waiting for work that might not come. Everyone is moving, but no one seems to be going anywhere. There's a current to it, a rhythm. If you stop, you're in the way. Now here's where it gets complicated, because St. Giles isn't just poor, it's strategically poor. The city authorities, the ones who run the wealthier parts of London, they know this place exists. They just don't want to deal with it. St. Giles has become what you might call a sanctuary for people the law is looking for. Debtors, criminals, people who owe money they'll never have. The parish boundaries here create legal gray zones. Step across this street and you're in a different jurisdiction, different rules, or fewer rules. So people hide here, not just from the law, from creditors, from obligations, from their past. The district becomes a place where you can disappear as long as you're willing to live like this. And the authorities let it happen because it's easier than trying to fix it. Easier to let the poor be poor somewhere specific than to have them scattered everywhere. Food works differently here. There's no market like you'd find in the better parts of the city. No stalls with fresh meat and vegetables laid out cleanly. Instead, there are hawkers, people walking the streets selling whatever they've got. Pies that might be rabbit or might be rat. Bread that's more air than flour. Milk that's been watered down so many times it's barely white. You buy what you can afford, which usually means you buy what will keep you alive today and worry about tomorrow when it comes. There's a cookshop on the corner here, one of dozens in the district. You can smell the grease from 20 feet away. People bring their own ingredients if they have any, pay a penny to use the oven. If you don't have ingredients, you can buy whatever they're making, a bowl of something hot. Meat maybe, vegetables probably. It's not about taste, it's about calories. Water is the real problem. I mentioned the pump earlier, but let me be clear about what that means. There's no concept of clean water here. The Thames is downstream. Sewage flows into it from every part of the city, then the tides push it back up. The wells pull from groundwater that's been contaminated by cesspits, by animal waste, by everything. People get sick constantly. Dysentery. Cholera, though they don't call it that yet. Fevers that come from nowhere and kill within days, but people adapt. They drink beer instead when they can. Small beer, barely alcoholic, but the brewing process kills some of the bacteria. Children drink it. Everyone drinks it. It's safer than water. Not safe, just safer. Now let's talk about control, because the question everyone asks is, who's in charge here? And the answer is, it depends. Officially, the parish vestry has authority. They're supposed to collect taxes, maintain order, help the poor. But the vestry is made up of local property owners, and most property owners in St. Giles don't live in St. Giles. They own buildings, collect rent, and stay far away. So enforcement is spotty. What you get instead are informal hierarchies. The landlord's agent who actually collects rent and evicts people when they can't pay. The local tough who everyone knows and everyone avoids. The women who run the cookshops and alehouses and hear everything, know everything. Power here isn't official. It's personal. It's knowing who to pay, who to avoid, who to ask for help when things go wrong. And things go wrong constantly. Fires are common. These buildings are timber and thatch packed together, heated by open flames. One candle tips over and half a court burns. People die. The parish records are full of it, but the neighborhood rebuilds. Same spot, same methods, because where else are they going to go? Disease is worse than fire. Plague runs through St. Giles every few years. Not the Black Death, not anymore, but smaller outbreaks, enough to kill dozens, sometimes hundreds. The city tries to quarantine infected houses. They nail the doors shut, paint a red cross on the front, station a guard. The idea is to contain it. But when you're living 12 people to a room, containment doesn't work. It just means everyone inside dies together. Here's the thing that gets me, the scale. Because when you're walking these streets, it feels small, claustrophobic, like the whole world has shrunk to these few blocks. But St. Giles isn't unique. There are districts like this all over London. Southwark, Whitechapel, Clerkenwell, tens of thousands of people living like this, maybe more. The numbers are hard to pin down because no one's counting. The census doesn't care about people who don't own property. So you have this massive city, one of the largest in Europe, and a huge percentage of it is invisible, not because it's hidden, but because the people who write the histories, who draw the maps, who make the decisions, they're not here. They're in Westminster, in the financial district, in the places where streets are paved and water runs clean. This version of London, the one we're standing in, doesn't make it into their records unless something goes catastrophically wrong. And it does go wrong. 1665 is the year the plague comes back hard. It starts here, in St. Giles, in courtyards like the one we walked through. It spreads because of how people live, close together, sharing water, sharing space, sharing everything. By the time the wealthier parts of the city notice, it's too late. Thousands die, maybe 100,000 across the city. The bills of mortality, the weekly death counts, they spike so high the numbers stop making sense. but even that doesn't change St. Giles. After the plague, people come back. They rebuild. They crowd into the same spaces, because the forces that created this place, the economic pressures, the lack of alternatives, those don't go away. The city doesn't suddenly decide to house people properly. It just waits for the death toll to drop and moves on. Movement through the district is its own language. There are routes, paths people take to avoid certain streets, courtyards you don't enter unless you know someone. It's not hostile exactly, but it's territorial. People protect what little they have. That includes space. It includes privacy or the illusion of it. If you don't belong, you feel it. Not through violence, usually, through eyes. Through the way conversations stop when you pass. I keep thinking about the children. There are so many of them. Running through the streets, working as apprentices if they're lucky, begging if they're not. Childhood here doesn't look like childhood anywhere else. You grow up fast or you don't grow up at all. Infant mortality is staggering. Half of children born here don't make it to age 5. The ones who do are tough in ways that are hard to articulate. They know how to navigate, how to survive. There's a strange beauty to it if you look past the suffering, not the poverty itself, but the resilience. The way people find small joys, a street performer drawing a crowd, neighbors sharing a meal even when there's barely enough, songs drifting out of an alehouse at night. It's not romanticizing to acknowledge that life continues even in the worst conditions. People laugh. They fall in love. They argue and make up. They're human. That sounds obvious, but it's easy to forget when you're reading about places like this in abstract terms. The systems that govern London, the ones that matter to the people who run it, they don't account for St. Giles. Taxes collected here are minimal because most people own nothing. Infrastructure doesn't extend here because there's no profit in it. Law enforcement is reactive at best. The parish church tries. They distribute alms. They record births and deaths, but they're overwhelmed. One priest for thousands of souls, it's not enough. It was never going to be enough. So what you get is a parallel city, one that exists in the shadow of official London. It has its own economy, its own rules, its own logic. And it works barely because people make it work. They create networks. They share information. They look out for each other when they can. Not out of altruism, out of necessity, because if you can't rely on anyone, you won't survive. I think what stays with me most is the inevitability of it. St. Giles didn't have to be this way. The overcrowding, the disease, the poverty, those weren't natural disasters. They were choices, not individual choices, systemic ones. The choice to let the city grow without planning for where people would live. The choice to prioritize profit over people. The choice to look away because confronting it was too expensive, too complicated, too uncomfortable. And those choices have consequences. They ripple forward. The Great Fire comes a year after the plague. It burns most of the city, but not St. Giles. The fire stops before it gets here. So while the rest of London rebuilds with stone and wider streets and better infrastructure, this district stays the same. Timber, overcrowded, forgotten. You can still find traces of it if you know where to look. The street names survive, the boundaries of the old parish. But the physical place, the courts and alleys and cramped buildings, most of that's gone now. Replaced, rebuilt, paved over. Which makes you wonder what we're paving over today. What systems we're ignoring because they're too uncomfortable to look at directly. What version of this place exists right now that future people will shake their heads at and say, how did they let that happen? I don't have an answer to that. I'm not sure anyone does. But standing here in this reconstructed version of St. Giles, trying to imagine what it felt like to live through, I keep coming back to the same thought. The city didn't see these people, didn't want to. And maybe that's the lesson. Not about London in the 1600s, but about how easy it is to make people invisible when you need them to be.